Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Quicc Gains, where I am joined by the illustrious guru of all things brand and creative design, Danny Matthews. We have known each other for a while. This episode will probably be filled with lots of banter, probably lots of us attempting to not swear and then possibly failing. Who knows? But we'll see how it goes. Danny,
Get your
welcome.
beep ready. Get your little beep thing ready.
Yeah. Yes, I do need one. I've got sound effects. We'll do that one every time you drop anything in that you shouldn't drop in.
Yeah, brilliant. Let's do it.
So, Danny, first off, you are known on social media as the actual Danny, aren't you? And the first thing probably people should know about you is that you are actually Danny.
I am. I'm not one of these fake, like, abbreviated Daniels to Danny. Like, I'm not mentioning any names, or even further abbreviated to Dan. It's Danny, Although I do sign my emails off as Dan, to be fair. So it does happen every now and then.
You nearly had me. Nearly. See, I was born a Daniel, and my wife and my mum both hate when I'm called anything other than Daniel.
Yeah.
But everyone calls me Dan. No one calls me Danny, apparently, because they keep on thinking that's just like champion of the world. Wasn't that like a Trunks Factory kind of style book?
Yeah, it was one of them things where, like, my mum was the same. Like, if anyone called me anything but Danny, it was like, no way. I remember my first, when I first went to school, it was like first day of primary school or something, or secondary school, I don't know what it was. But she told me a story once where I came home and told her that my name on the register, they kept calling it out as Daniel. And she went to the school and basically complained that they'd been calling me by the wrong name for all that time. And like kicked up a massive fuss and started saying his name's Danny, not Daniel. And yeah.
So you never got bullied at all, did you?
I guess exactly. I guess it filtered through to my adult life where I had to confirm to everyone what my actual name was. So I chose the actual Danny on social media, and it's just kind of stuck.
And your business is now called Danny and Co.
Yeah, because that's not egotistical or narcissistic in any way whatsoever.
Well, we are going to talk about brand today. So, personal brand. Should we start there?
Yeah, it's a good place to start.
Okay, so first off, you have a brand confidence scorecard, which is something that you help with a lot of businesses you start to help with a lot of businesses to figure out what their brand is, don't you? So tell us a bit about how brand confidence kind of starts in your head, and let's go from there.
Yeah, so brand confidence is something that it's something that I trademarked last year, and the reason being is that I spend so long with business owners and entrepreneurs and service businesses mostly that really struggle with the fact that they have a saturated market. A lot of us in the service industry, we find it really hard to differentiate ourselves between our competition and other people because we don't really know how to find our uniqueness. And what that does over time is we start off really excited about the business, like buzzing, we're going to go and get clients, and we get clients, and it reaffirms that, we know what we're doing and that we're good at what we do. So like this curve starts going and we're feeling great. But then small things happen over time, like competitors come out, you go to an event and meet someone who does exactly what you do, but you might get a sniff that they're charging more than you. And you start to hear people say phrases like, they just do the same as me, but they earn this much money. Or I can't believe they can charge that when we basically do the same thing. And what starts to happen is that our confidence in ourselves and what we do and the service we provide starts to dip away. And there's nothing that we have really that enables us to keep that momentum up or that confidence up. So every single client that I started dealing with was, I was basically coaching them through regaining confidence in what they actually did. And it wasn't because that they didn't have any skills. It's quite the opposite. They are amazing at what they do. but the problem is they have no way of differentiating themselves. So I realized that through the branding process of finding your ideal client and finding more of your ideal client and understanding that what you say and what you do plays a huge part in how you run your business, I realized that brand confidence was the goal that people were trying to get to, that kind of inner confidence about their uniqueness and what makes them special in a market that's filled with other people doing exactly the same thing as you. So I trademarked it, I branded it, and then put all of the knowledge that I learned from all the clients I've dealt with and how they've become brand confident into a scorecard, which is basically what's on screen now. It's essentially a free tool that allows you to identify the areas of brand confidence and where you might be lacking.
So what kind of details does it dig into? I've got to admit, I haven't actually done mine yet, although I will do after we have the stream, because let's face it, I probably should have done it beforehand.
Well,
to walk us through the kind of stuff that it has in there.
So it's the brand confidence scorecard measures you against the 4 different elements of branding. So strategy, identity, messaging, and behaviors. And essentially, it asks you things like, if I was to Google you, could I find positive public stories, for example? And that goes into kind of the behaviors and the awareness of who we are. It also asks questions around identity. So are you proud of your marketing materials and how they look and feel? And then it also asks questions that are a little bit more strategic, like, do you feel you spend money on ads with no real return? And some people get a little bit confused as to how that links with branding, but the reality is that branding is so core and so foundational to any business. Doesn't matter whether you're a personal brand or a business or a large corporate. It's so core and foundational to any business that pretty much any question you ask can be solved with your brand. You just need to know how to navigate around it. So yeah, that's the kind of thing you can expect from the scorecard.
See, interestingly, I've granted, let's go back to names for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my name is actually quite annoying, right? Because when you said when you Google your name,
Yeah.
when someone Googles my name, I don't come up, right? So I've been up in the kind of entrepreneurial world for many, many years. But when you Google Dan Holloway, and I'll probably just share my screen actually, and I'll show you because it's just like, it irritates me. It really, really does annoy the hell out of me. So when you Google Dan Holloway, there's a guy who does, I think he's kind of some kind of like entrepreneurial affiliate for some other person's program. Kind of, he travels around the world and he kind of just, he's an affiliate dude. So there's that Dan Holloway. There's a guitarist. There's some research fellow in Oxford. There's a bunch of people who are on YouTube. I think there's a US Navy admiral, if I remember rightly. There's a couple of authors called Dan Holloway, and I'm like, where am I? I'm like page 4 or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small, to be honest, it's such a small indication when you Google yourself. It's going to be great, obviously, if you're on page 1, but that's not just about branding. That's technical, that's semantics and SEO and all the rest of it. And we can get a little bit too involved in that. But in this kind of example, for anyone who's thinking, how can your brand get you on page 1 of Google? It can, it just not right now. It's not a quick fix. It's not, your brand is one of them things which is not static. It moves constantly. And one of the things that I try and say to people and explain to people is that once we go through this branding process, don't think it's over, but understand that you're currently a static company. But people who really understand branding and what brand is become living organizations, which means they're constantly moving, they're constantly evolving, they're tweaking things, they're saying different things. So yeah, I think some people think it's a one quick fix, and it's not really.
I think that's where I kind of resided myself, and this is a while ago because my name's not changed over the years. And when I first found out, I was like, I was a little bit demotivated by it. I was a bit like, Well, all these people, they're like famous, and our CEO Mike, he's like, in this whole time I thought Dan Holloway wrote books and played the guitar. No, I haven't got any books. I'm not an author, and I don't play guitar, and I wasn't in the US Navy, and I'm not an admiral, and I'm not a traveling entrepreneurial affiliate either. So, but it did for a while kind of shake my confidence a bit, because it was that whole, well, how am I going to catch up with these people? How am I going to kind of get myself on top? And then after a while, this is going back a few years, I realized, well, I don't actually care. If people know how to find me, they'll find me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm cool with that. But it took me a little while to get there, if I'm honest.
Do you know, this is, if you Google my name, it comes up with a radio presenter most of the time. And I guess that's part of brand confidence, and it being a trademark was actually to remove the focus away from me as a person and as a company. So it starts to become the central focal point. So anyone who wants to find me, they don't search Danny Matthews, they search brand confidence, which is an interesting way to kind of promote your brand, I guess. You find, and this, we could go into much deeper conversations about naming conventions and naming businesses, which is
let's do that.
And it's kind of why I don't really care that I called my company after myself, because even though
you are a narcissist.
Yeah, a little bit. But it's because it doesn't really matter to me, and what matters is what comes out the other end and what I build in the meantime. So brand confidence, I kind of achieves that.
So let's actually, naming conventions. We're going to jump around brand, because let's face it, brand is such a massive, like ridiculously huge topic. We're not going to cover it all in one session. So let's skim through how to name things, what to name things. We'll skim through design and design theory, and how to actually kind of like real quick wins, using online tools that everyone has available to them. So let's give the audience a little kind of a quick win series, let's say, on brand.
Okay.
So how do you name things? Let's start there.
How do you name things? So there's probably 467 trillion ways to come up with a name for something. Really good place to start is timelines. So one of the things which is great, doesn't matter whether it's trying to figure out your values or like your core values as a person and as a company, I guess, but more as a person. Trying to think of what you would tell as your story and kind of highlights and lowlights and how a general story goes. All these kind of things, including naming as well. It's a really worthwhile task to sit down. And this isn't something you sit down and do in an hour. Like, you need good focus time, a little bit of research beforehand, and to sit down for a good couple of hours and then come back to it after and really map out a timeline of your life. And this might seem a little bit like a big task for someone to do for something that is seemingly naming. And I'll come on to the polar opposite side in a minute. But a really good thing to do in general in branding is to do a bit of a timeline. Do a timeline of your life and mark with different colors what is a highlight, what is a low light, and what is something that you recognize as a pivotal point. And you can learn so much about yourself from that. And some people will draw ideas from that for naming. So if people realize that they have 3 core values, for example, they might filter a triangle into their branding somehow. No one's going to know about this. Like, no one's ever going to say, how come you use a triangle? Because no one cares. But it is a way for you to come up with ideas and to have something that's meaningful for you to begin with. And then you can move on to what other people care about later. Now, the opposite end of the spectrum to that, your name really doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter at all. I'm massively a fan of the notion that essentially Google or Facebook could have been called Noodles and Giant Apple, and they would have been just as successful and did just the same amount of stuff. So yeah, I mean, there's a million ways to come up with a name. It's important if you want it to be important. Otherwise, it's really not that important, and you should probably focus on what's involved in your what kind of transformation and problem you solve and what you're called.
See, this is why I loved having you on here, because the depth that you think about things, I've always loved. I've loved that for years. And I mean, what I get from what you just said is that a lot of the questions people ask is, what should I name my course? What should I name my product? What should I name my service, my business, my whatever? And like you say, it doesn't matter. But what I took from what you just said was that when you map out, like you say, your timeline and things that are important to you, the fact that you put a triangle into something, it means nothing to your audience. It means everything to you. And that from that becomes your confidence in the thing, which is going to give you the motivation and the drive to consistently push the thing and to sell the thing and to embody what you need to be as an entrepreneur. That's kind of what I get from what you're saying. We're going a bit deep here, but
yeah, and I think we're talking about momentum here. So it's not, if you've run a company for 10 years and everything's good, you have the process and you have constant clients and customers walking through the door and the cash register ringing, it really doesn't matter. But we're talking about momentum and confidence and these things that it's not a product or it's not a service or a thing that you sell, but it's a thing that drives what you do and how you do it. And they're important things, as are momentum and confidence. So yeah, we're talking about momentum. And if you're going to do this big elaborate thing of doing a timeline because it will give you enough to go on when times get tough, then do it. I'm all for doing things that give you a bit of a boost when times get hard. That's why I believe in discovering more about who you are and your purpose and your belief in yourself and your core values. Because when times get tough and the cash register isn't ringing, you can go to something that isn't a financial, like a physical thing. And that's what you want. You just want momentum so you can push through the other side of whatever's going on.
So let me ask you this then. There's a YouTuber, so I won't name names, but they just did a launch, and I heard them say a phrase, something along the lines of they wanted to step into a higher ticket brand, because what they had before, it was designed by them and they did it, and they went through a number of launches, and that was great. They got a lot of success from those launches. But this time around, they wanted to level up their game, and they spent a huge amount of money with branding and design to step into that high ticket branded feel. So to people like that, do you think that's necessary, or do you think it's more about them than it is their audience?
Both. I think there's...
Because a lot of people get stuck with that, don't they? They start and then they think it doesn't feel premium enough. It doesn't feel good enough. And they start comparing themselves with competition and other people in the market. And again, the confidence begins to dip.
Mm-hmm.
But what would you say to people who want that feel? And I've been one of them. I mean, I spoke to you about that a couple of months ago, didn't I? With my own business, it was, I want it to feel more polished. And I was very acutely aware that was all about me, mm-hmm. and not really about the audience, because I felt a bit crappy about what I was putting out into the world. And you tied it up for me and job done. But I was very much aware that was all about me and not about the audience.
I believe in everything in context.
Ooh, this is going to be deep.
Without knowing a massive amount about that person, I can't really give an answer for them. But what I can say is that having a professionally designed and created brand with, from the strategy to the messaging, to the behaviors, to the actual identity design and the creation of what they're going to look and feel like to their clients, having a polished version of that is both. So that is, you have confidence because you've invested in the future of the business, how you look and feel, how that links with your audience, because that's all part of branding, and how you communicate with them. But also, I don't think you can do, I don't think you could do the same thing without investing in that. There is a certain that, and it's not even an aesthetic thing. It's not a look thing. It's more of a feel. There is, I can guarantee you, like that there's a reason that not many people look like Apple, and it's because not many people can create what Apple have created, and that's it by way of brand in this sense. So that means their strategy, their messaging, their behaviors, how they act and what they do, and how they promote things, how they launch things, their sequence, and then their identity. I don't believe Apple could have created their identity, albeit that it's black, white, and grey, right? I don't think they could have created their black, white, and grey simple identity without the background work. Just don't think you could have done it, because it's much easier to create something bright and colourful and that you think is going to resonate with your audience, than scale it back and like have a less is more approach. It's actually more difficult than you think. So yeah, I don't know for this person in particular in terms of creating a high ticket thing or like leveling up a bit. What I do believe is if they've invested in it, they will do it. They will level up, because the feeling that you get from that and that their clients will get from that will do the work for them. That's what branding is for. It does the work for you.
I love that answer.
Do you know, do you know how ridiculous this is going to sound? I think I love that answer as well.
And just so we're aware, we are going to do like repurposing on all of the streams that we do, by the way. God. So that's going to become a video in its own right.
Amazing.
So, I mean, you mentioned momentum earlier, and I mean, I feel like we're kind of like almost making a cake here or something. There's different components. So you've got confidence, you've got momentum. Time is one that just came out there to me. You know, it takes time and momentum, you know, or momentum over time, whatever you want to call it, to build up that brand and to evolve and to scale. So far we've got branding is confidence, it's momentum, confidence and momentum over time. Would you agree with that? Is that our kind of our steps so far that people need to kind of like realize branding is?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's figure out some quick wins that people can actually do or achieve with their brand right now if they're not quite ready to invest in someone like yourself, really kind of like digging deep into their brand and not quite there yet.
Yeah.
What kind of things can they do to get them baby steps towards someone like you?
Okay. First thing is, you can't do anything and you won't do anything if there is no purpose beyond money. This scares some people.
It's about to get deep again.
This is going to get deep.
I know where you're going with this because we talked about this before.
So, some people won't like what I'm about to say.
Okay. Don't swear. Mike will tell me off.
Okay. You know when people go on about having a purpose? You know, Simon Sinek did this big find your why thing. Everyone decided to dig deep and got lost along the way. Purpose is a immensely important part of your brand. I think once you've got some goals in place of what you want to do as a company and as a leader, you have to then work on finding your purpose. Now, I'm not saying that you need to discover it immediately. What I'm saying is you need to be in constant pursuit of it. And that scares some people because the amount of times I've sat in offices with prospects that have all the amazing signs of a company that needs a rebrand, needs to reposition, needs to find a new audience before they lose the whole audience they currently have. and they need to do something about it. The amount of times that I've mentioned purpose, and the CEOs or the managing directors of the company have turned down my proposal purely based on the fact that they're scared that they're going to be exposed, because they don't care about anything apart from what money the company gives them. So that becomes a scary thing for a leader to go through. But if you're watching this and you're thinking, what's this guy talking about purpose? All I'm saying is that not you as a human, although it does apply, but not you as a human, but as a company, try and attach yourself to something other than money. Meaning that if you're looking for something, so here's a good question to ask yourself. Two questions. One is, why do we as a company exist beyond making money? Very, very simple one to start thinking about purpose. Number two, when someone buys what we do, who benefits apart from them and us? And that will start to allow your brain to go into thinking about the kind of impact you're going to make over the amount of money you're going to make. Believe it or not, however deep that this conversation can go, the very, very simple part of discovering or being in the pursuit of finding your purpose is that in the really, really hard times, you can latch onto something else that's not driven by fear or scarcity. You can latch onto a more giving, more growth mindset through, because you already know it's about something else. For me, it's about empowering the creative community to build a career out of what they love, because I never got the support and the encouragement to do that. So when times get tough, I just go, does anyone need help? And then it's not about money. It's about who can I impact now while the going's tough or whatever. What can I do to give back to them, to reap the rewards later? Because that's just how life works. So yeah, that's one. We're talking about quick wins. Some people are going, this is not a quick win, but there's a couple of things that you can start to do. Number two, if you just need to give yourself enough confidence to get out there in front of people, there's so many tools out there now for you to do it yourself. You don't need to go to a branding consultant or a designer. And actually, I would argue you don't even need to go to a marketplace website to design you something for a $5, not mentioning any names, because you can do it yourself. Like, there's so much out there now. Like captions, Quicc, for example. Like, if you want to design something that's amazing, Canva, it has a quadrillion photos and templates and social media templates and God knows what that you can use until you find your feet, or just to give you that start to that starting confidence for you to get momentum and get yourself out there if it's a brand new thing, or if you want to test out launching a new product and you don't want to spend loads of time and money on it. Create some posts in Canva, put it out there. Someone's going to see it, reply, and that you start to get the very early kindlings of what could be in the future. And if needs be, and you don't want to go to someone like me to do that, there's so many tools out there. You just need to know about them and go and use them.
And to be fair, we actually do have many users who use Quicc, and they actually use Canva to level up their video. So there's a lot of people who used to, like, their early days, let's say, was they'll record a video, they'll upload it to our platform, they'll caption it, they'll put some branded colors on there, nice background, text color, that kind of thing, and they'll put it on social media. Now they do that same thing. So they record a video, then they stick that video into Canva, because Canva can do video now, and they kind of make it a little bit more pretty layout, and they have like a section at the top or the bottom, and they use Canva's design capabilities, export the video from there, stick it through Quicc, and just literally put the captions over the top of that layout, and then all of a sudden they have a branded kind of templatable captioned video, which took them not very long at all. It's like most people just do it off their phones, because most people don't even realize Canva has an app on your phone now as well.
Yeah.
And it's, like you say, it's so easy.
Yeah, you can literally. So here's a quick win. Go to canva.com, sign up for an account, literally get 30 social media templates that drag and drop your logo on top of it. Put a bunch of text on, quotes, whatever you want to say, save them. You've just got yourself 30 days worth of content, and it will probably take you in the region of about an hour and 20 minutes, if that.
And the 20 minutes, not just an hour.
The 20 minutes is probably exporting and putting them into a folder.
So 20 minutes for productivity saving.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, how many people do you know actually use Canva or tools like that? Do you use Canva? I genuinely have no idea.
Well, I mean, as you know, a while ago I had CanvaWorks, which was a community where I taught people how to use it. And the reason I did that is because, number one, it was easy for me to do, and it meant that I could break into an audience which, maybe at the start of their journey, and I could capture them at the start of their journey. And
Yep.
There has been some bigger clients that have come out of people that were just starting 2 years ago, or it was helpful for me to get them from the ground up. Canva is an amazing tool. I used to do Canva setups where I'd basically set up people's brands in Canva with their logos and colors and fonts and all the rest of it, and do a couple of templates for them and say, there you go. Now all you have to do is duplicate the page and do another one. So I mean, it's amazing tools. I don't think that we should. It's me speaking as a designer now, but I don't think as designers we should be afraid of tools like Canva, because they're only a gateway for us to get more work from better people, and giving back to the people that need it most early on in their business days, I guess. So yeah, I think they're amazing tools.
So we've got confidence, momentum, we've got time. Tools like Canva, which you can use, and Quicc, and many others out there, without overcomplicating things. Do you think complication is kind of the enemy of momentum?
Yeah, massively.
You can't even really answer one way to that question, I know, but
yeah. And do you know, branding itself is complicated? No, it's not complicated. It's broad, is what it is. And we started talking at the start of this conversation about branding and momentum, and trying to define what it is. But I can tell you, the people that have been in branding for 100 years, that have written books and articles and things in Harvard Business Review or whatever, not even they can define it. And the reason is that it's such a broad topic. It's out of context for everyone who talks about it. So no one understands it. Marketing people think it's part of marketing. Branding people think marketing is part of branding. So it's just it's so broad that you have to have some context in order to define it, which is why I don't try to be honest. And part of the reason that brand confidence as a trademark has helped me out is because I always relate it to that again. So if anyone asks me, how do you define branding? I would say, well, I don't, but I define it as I define brand confidence because that's what I do. Yeah, so I've tried to make it easy for myself. Doesn't mean it's easy for anyone else, though.
I mean, for context of those watching, whether you're live on the replay, and if you have any questions for Danny, by the way, feel free, stick them in the comments, either live or on the replay, and we will absolutely get back to you and answer them either live or on the replay. But for anyone who knows Danny, and if you don't know him, go through some of his social media posts, you'll find that the posts that get some of the highest engagement, other than pictures of his son, because his son's very cute, other than that, it's when he asks questions that he knows everyone has an opinion on, but there's no actual real answer for. So we always have this banter, and we have done for a while, about what's more important, branding, marketing, or sales. And people always have an opinion about it. And he just sits there with that smug little smile like he's got there. And he's like, go on, give me more likes, give me more comments. Go on, you want to.
Thanks.
And those posts go on for days, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's probably my favorite question, actually.
I kind
That's
of
what I
guessed.
want.
You ask it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I repurpose it every couple of months or so. And it's just so easy because everyone loves giving an opinion without any context whatsoever. People are always answering questions with no context. I see it all the time. Someone will post in a group about like, what's the best way to use Facebook marketing or whatever, Facebook ads, and someone will jump on it like, the best way to do it is this. I'm like, you have no idea about this person's business whatsoever. Like, how are you answering this question? And it's the same with that. What's important, sales, marketing, or branding? And like most things, the answer is it depends. And until you have context, you really can't answer. But yeah, I try to stick in my lane and try and push everyone else outside of theirs.
So we've gone through a few more steps, obviously. Quick wins. We've touched on some of those with the online tools.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get a little bit deep with sticking on brand confidence. If someone is just starting out, that's one thing. What about when you're, I mean, let's face it, at the moment it's a weird old time for everyone. There's a lot of strange stuff going on in the world. There's a lot of unexpected stuff going on in the world. And there's many brands that have found, kind of lulls in their sales and their marketing and their revenue. Others that have just seen crazy growth. But they've had to either dial back or they've had to level up, but in a very, very short space of time. So when, let's say, for instance, you need to level up in a very short space of time, where would you start doing that?
So let's assume you have goals. You know what you want out of the business. You have a loose idea of what you want to achieve aside from money for the business. So let's assume that's all good to go. You're comfortable with that. One of the biggest things, I guess, the biggest problems that we solve as a company is realignment, and I think a lot of people need this right now. And all realignment is figuring out what you do at the minute, what your competitors are doing, and what people actually want. And that's probably the hardest bit. And that's it, really. I think what everyone's trying to do at the minute is figure it out. And for some reason in the business community, especially been going for a while, because we get stuck in like the day to day, or we get stuck in the routine of doing what we need to be doing, and then we get thrown out of that routine unexpectedly. It's really difficult to see the wood through the trees, and so I guess what I'm getting at is the biggest thing that we help people with as a company is realignment, and it's because people come to us like, we just don't know where we are anymore. Like, we've lost track of competitors. We know who they are, but we don't know what they're doing. Our customers just seem to be dropping off like flies, and actually most of the time that's not noticeable. If you look at your CRM system or whatever you use to track clients, Excel spreadsheet, it's not noticeable in the short space of time. You have to look at the bigger picture. And if you're consistently losing customers over time, someone else is there doing something different or better than you. And we lose track of that. So the biggest thing that people need to do right now is realign themselves with the new market, I guess you could call it, because everyone's changed. Everyone's psychographs have changed. The way that we think about things, the way that we make decisions about buying things, how we buy things, what avenues we go through. Businesses will close every day for the foreseeable future that would have closed without coronavirus. It's just been sped up by the current circumstances. So if that sounds a little bit like you're worried about that, then I want to urge you or try and help you do one thing, and that is to realign yourself. First thing you can do. Have you ever seen a radar graph? Do you know what a radar graph is? It's one of those things which is like a spider web. So let's say you've got a spider web and it has like lines between it. Do you know what I mean? They're
Yep.
really good. You can probably find a template on Google or whatever. But you can get a radar template, and you can put on each corner of the pentagram, for example, parts of your competition. So the product, the price, the quality, their messaging, things that they do, like their behaviors, how they look, what you can even do what they're called if you like, and have and basically get a couple of those and go to each one of your competitors and rate them like 1 to 10, 1 to 5 or whatever. Are they good at, is their product good? Yes, the quality is great. Let's go 5. Is the price good? Relating to the market, it's probably cheap. Their messaging is a little bit off. They don't look like they quite know who their target market is, etc., etc. Just by doing that, you will find some white space. You will find a space where the quality is great, but it's quite cheap. And honestly, here's a little hack. Sometimes the only way you can differentiate yourself with someone else is with a higher price, quite frankly. Now, that's a dangerous game because anyone can compete on price or whatever, but that's usually going down. What I'm saying is go up and go up a lot, because you'll find that there's a different category of customer in that higher bracket. You won't even be competing with them anymore because they're different customers. So you can do the exact same thing as another company are doing, just with a higher price, and the people that want to pay it will pay it because they want to tell people that they paid it, quite simply, some of the time.
Do you know, there's a book, funny enough, I put out an Instagram story just today because I started listening to it in the car, a book by Seth Godin called All Marketers Are Liars. And I don't know if you've read that.
I haven't actually. No. I know
You'd love it.
Yeah.
So one of the first things he says I think it's in the intro, was he gave an example. I can't for the life of me remember the name of the company, but he gave an example of I think it was wine testers. And there's this glass manufacturer that makes expensive wine glasses, and not a single high profile wine, boffin, guru, reviewer, whatever you want to call them, not a single one of them said that the wine they were tasting didn't taste better in the expensive glass. But when they actually do a scientific test, like double blind studies and everything, not a single one of them could tell the difference. And he basically says that it's all about, and I think he refers to it as the I can't remember, what was it? It was basically people's baseline beliefs are essentially what you're trying to manipulate as a marketer, and that baseline belief never change. Well, it doesn't never changes, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of money to try and change that baseline belief. But if you just layer your product messaging on top of that, i.e., I want to feel, if you're an egotist, a narcissist, if you want to name a business after yourself, layer that on top of the people who have that baseline belief in the first place, that your work is done for you. And it was a really interesting start of a book. I'm only on chapter 2 at the moment. But All Marketers Are Liars. Have a read, because it kind of talks about the same thing you were just alluding to.
Yeah, interesting. I've always found the white label market fascinating, because essentially what happens is, a really good example is like the CBD market. So essentially there are CBD producers all over the world, and this happens in every single corner of whatever market you'll go to. But there's like CBD producers all over the world that all create the same product with the same process and the same ingredients with the same outcome. And then there are hundreds of thousands of people setting up shops every year selling CBD products from the same person, the same manufacturer, with the same process and the same ingredients, with just a different label on it. Now, how do you sell one for $100 and one for $12? How do you sell it the $100 one and not the $12 one? Because it doesn't just happen through marketing. You can't just throw money at it in a hope that they will sell and you get a return. It just doesn't happen. You have to know the people that will buy the $100 one. You have to know how they talk, what they do day to day, how their daily life happens, the brands they interact with, how they communicate, how they talk. You have to know all of that to maximize it. That's just pointless. You're just throwing money at something for short-term gains. So that can be used as a good example, actually, in markets that you feel are saturated and you need to differentiate yourself.
Where do you think storytelling comes into play there?
Storytelling is a layer of branding, a very important layer of branding, and actually, I'll tell you why. Storytelling is such an important layer of branding for the reason that if all else fails, it is the only thing that differentiates you from anyone else. The only thing. Because we can all tell a story in a framework, but they will always differ. They will always be different. They'll always have different outcomes and different characters and different heroes and different guides and all that kind of stuff. The one thing, if I give anyone a tip about story, is number one, use it. But number two, when you're trying to figure out what your story is and how you're going to tell that, one big mistake people make is that they figure that they're the hero and they're not, ever. It's pointless you telling a story where you're the hero, because no one cares. So try and make it about the customer as the hero instead, and it will make a huge difference to the way that you talk to your customers and who buys from you, essentially.
So are businesses essentially almost like the sidekick empowering the hero along their journey?
Yeah,
the hero being the customer.
We are guides. We are the customer is the Hobbit, and we are Gandalf. That's the only way I can describe it. The customer is always the hero. That's an incorrect statement. The customer should always be the hero. Because it's the only way that and it's back to purpose again. It's the only way we find purpose outside money, is if we are guiding someone to a result or a transformation, not saying I do transformations. That's the main difference.
Interesting. I'm pretty sure I'm going to make that into a video as well.
Probably.
We have
I love this repurposing thing. I love it.
We do have a question from, funny enough, Mike, Quicc CEO. Okay. So he said, welcome. So what advice would you give businesses who see major societal events taking place and are deciding whether or not to chime in on them at the risk of dividing their audiences or customers?
Let me read that again, Mike. What advice would you give businesses who see major societal events taking place and are deciding whether or not to chime in on them? Got you. So this is, do I use current situations as a avenue or a opportunity to speak my voice? That's kind of how I took that question, Mike. Yeah, so there's honestly, I think I'm trying to think of a short answer for this.
It can be a long one if you want. I don't mind.
Okay. So events are happening every day all around the world. So this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier when I said that the attitudes and the way that people buy and the way that people communicate are changing. I think the reality of the matter is that it's because of events that happen, whether it's societal, political, whatever it might be. So I guess your question is more around how do they make that decision, whether to chime into it or not. I guess honestly, you just have to be prepared for what you think is going to happen. You will. So I've asked a recent question about branding audits. So let me put it into this kind of context, because I think this will be relevant for the question. I would like to go to a business. They won't see this, so I can say who they are. An ice cream place 20 minutes from me. They've been around for decades, and they haven't changed their brand in a long time. They're about to go through a huge transition where they've got an ice cream shop that's been closed for 6 months. Not everyone can sustain that. So they have to start thinking about, where are their customers? What are they doing? How are they communicating? Where might they buy ice cream in future? And do we now have the brand, not just visual, but do we now have the strategy, the messaging, the behaviors, and the identity to attract these new customers? Essentially, they're the same people, they just think in a different way. And so I guess the question relating to this is, do I use coronavirus as a way to communicate with them, or do I just communicate with them? My advice would be just communicate with them. I have a mantra, which is similar to what people may have heard Gary Vee say, which is like about building the biggest building without tearing others down. I really believe in that, like heavily, that you can do anything just by doing it. You don't have to meddle with outside forces. Unless, and there is only one caveat to this, I think, and that is that part of your purpose and your core values relate to that social, economic, political situation. So, for example, if I doubt this is anyone, to be honest, but if you have a purpose beyond making money that is around better politics, I'm using this as an example, don't shoot the messenger. So if your purpose is like better quality politics, whatever it might be. So apart from the ice cream you sell, you support the idea of better politics. Yeah, you might include that in your marketing. You might include that in as part of your brand to communicate to a specific type of person. Yeah, I don't think it will hinder your opportunity. Yes, you will get people that won't agree with you, but some people don't agree that branding is important. I don't even know what else to say on that.
No, it's not an easy question.
No, it's
and Mike's
not.
a CEO, so his job is to ask difficult questions. I get them all the time, with a smile on his face and love in his heart, I'm sure. But it's true. I mean, we spoke about this similar sort of thing internally. I won't tell you the details, but with all the different things that have been going on in the world, we did have a conversation internally within Quicc of, should we, shouldn't we? And really the conclusion we came to was, if we're asking the question of should we have a voice on this particular topic, just when that particular topic is popular, essentially, then that's probably not the best time to do it. That's not a good reason to chime in on that kind of a topic. You should chime in on that topic if you want to, aside from it being popular and in the news.
You have to ask yourself, is it relevant?
Yeah.
Because as much as we can talk about things that we are passionate about, believe in, have a connection with, is it actually relevant to you growing the business? Which is, I guess, what I was getting to with purpose. Like if it's, I really want to use it like a rock solid example, but I'm finding it hard to come up with one.
I don't think there are many. I think it's the problem.
Who did I come across? So on LinkedIn, there was a page I came across. I'm going to really do it an injustice now, but it had something to do with, it had something to do with the Black Lives Matter campaign. It was a company specifically set up to promote the lives of black people, even though that's not what they did as a company, but their brand is all about that. That is their purpose. So they might be a marketing agency, but if they believe in if they have African American CEO that cares about that stuff and has beliefs in that stuff, they're going to be pretty okay with communicating that to people, because it relates to them. It's relevant to them. It's relevant to the business. If the purpose of the business is that they then empower other black people to rise to leadership positions, that's part of their purpose. That's their mission. That's what they do. So absolutely, they should use it as a message to connect with the right people. So yeah, I think I'm coming to the conclusion now that I think the answer to your question, Mike, and I hope this has kind of been helpful in some way, is you just have to ask if it's relevant, and if it is, make it a humongous part of the brand. If it's not, just leave it be.
See, answer another repurposable piece of content.
I'm good at these. I'm good at these sound bites.
And yeah, I mean, I think you and I have the same view on that. And have you ever met my wife? I'm not sure if you.
No.
You haven't. Okay, we should remedy that at some point.
Yeah.
So I've met your entire family, but you don't know mine. But
Yeah,
but my wife is.
I know we've known each other for ages, actually, for years, actually, and I don't think I've ever asked where she's from, but
Barbados.
She is from Barbados.
Her mum is, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whereabouts it was.
Yeah, so the Black Lives Matter movement is one that we talk about as a couple and as a family. You know, her side of the family a lot, obviously. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I've had a couple of conversations with them just to kind of reinforce your point, where they've seen some businesses that support the BAME community, which is great. But they've also seen some other businesses that I think there was one that my wife mentioned that I think it was based in Manchester. The founder was a 50-year-old bald white guy. And he was using that in his campaigns, but he had like no relevance to it at all. And he got scathed for it. And it just did not settle well with that community in the slightest.
I can imagine. It's like, if it's not relevant or you can't tell a story about it, what's the point? Like and I think we can smell this, right, from a mile off. Like, if it's genuine or not. It's a feeling more than an action. We just know. We know. No one has to explain anything to us. We're just like, nah, that doesn't sit with me.
I think something I say to coaching clients quite a lot in my business. There's a phrase you've probably heard me say as well. If it barks like a dog, smells like a dog, looks like a dog, chances are it's not a duck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think people are stupid.
No, we can smell it. We can smell it. Look, if you one of the big things that I believe is, apart from like building the biggest building and that kind of stuff, is just intent. Intent is everything. Intent. Like, was that a good, like people ask, was that a good thing to do or a bad thing to do? Well, what was the intention? Well, the intention wasn't to do a bad thing. Okay, there's your answer.
And that goes hand in hand with authenticity as well, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's, if you can't be your authentic self and have a clear intent that's not a negative one,
mm-hmm.
you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Did you mean to hurt someone? Yes. That's a bad thing. Simple as that. Was your intentions good? Yes. Okay. You're okay. And yes, there's probably some debate in between that about people's opinions, but good is good and bad is bad at the end of the day. And I think there is a blanket for both, where good is good and bad is bad. And there's not many people that can argue with it. But it all follows intent. As long as your intent's good, I think you're good.
Where do you think, I'm just very curious here, since we're talking about it, where do you think you would sit on I already know the answer to this question, but I'd like you to elaborate on it a little bit. The any publicity is good publicity approach, because many people are strong believers in that.
Yeah. Interesting. Any publicity is just publicity. And again, it kind of, I guess, comes down to intent. Like I guess there's a big conversation about this, and the only person that comes to mind at the minute is, for any of you Americans, there's this incredible woman in the UK called Katie Hopkins that nobody likes apart from me. She's pure entertainment value. She's a terrible human being. And there is an element of her which is like, she just does it to get in the press and get a little bit of publicity. Is it good or bad? It's probably good for her. No one likes it, but yeah. I think my answer to this is, like most things, it depends. But I think most publicity, even when it's bad, like I could have some bad publicity tomorrow that is about something small, but being made into a big thing. And I wouldn't be too worried about that, because it'll blow over and everyone will forget about it. And a YouTuber might refer to it in 10 years and say this was a bad point in 2020. Who cares? There are certain bits, there's certain parts of bad publicity that have a time limit, I think. And it's that stuff. Unless you do, the only bad publicity really is permanently damaging stuff, I think.
I mean, there was a case, wasn't there, a while back where, and I won't go into detail, obviously, but a lady, just before she boarded the plane, sent a certain tweet. And then when she got off the plane, like 8 or 9 hours later, whenever it was, she became single. She was jobless. I think she'd have her life threatened online by many hundreds of people. That was a bad choice. That was a silly thing to do.
Yeah, that's not
good publicity.
That's not good publicity. That is going to permanently tarnish your reputation forever. And actually, no, that there is a part of me that says, actually, that will blow over. People will forget about it. No one cares. Yeah, so I don't know about that one. I don't think she's permanently tarnished. I think she'd be fine getting another job.
Eventually,
people will just forget about it. I guess publicity is a little bit like your credit rating. It's only bad for so long unless you keep doing bad stuff. But the more good you do, it's like, what do they call it? It's like a
statute of limitations. It's
like a jar. It's like a credit report. I'm trying to think of like metaphors on metaphors and metaphors. It's ridiculous. It's like a credit report. Like, you do something bad, you have some bad publicity. Like, if you leave it, keep your head down for a bit, your credit score will go up over time. I wouldn't worry about it. But if you keep doing bad things, you're going to stay at the bottom. You're going to stay in the red, and no one's ever going to give you credit for anything ever again. And you'll eventually just go bankrupt. So,
and this leads us to one of the other things I want to talk about. Probably the last thing we're going to talk about, actually, because we've already hit time, but never mind. And we've actually heard. I'm guessing that was Zach in the background, who's your little boy, who's probably not so little boy since I last saw him. But for our children, or for our families, or for those we leave behind, I want to kind of dig into your brain a little bit just before parting ways on legacy and how that relates to brand. What are your thoughts on that?
I think to some extent, everyone who is self-employed is building a legacy. Even if your idea is to build a company and sell it in 5 years or 10 years or however long, it's still to build a legacy, because the idea is that it will lead on to something else that will lead on to something else that becomes a legacy. People who have legacy in mind are closer to their purpose than they think. So that's my general thoughts on that. I think legacy is Yeah, I guess it is a big thing, legacy, because essentially if you believe that we are put on this planet to leave it better than when we arrived, then it's big. And if you don't believe in that, you just haven't quite found um, something you really care about yet, or you haven't realised it at least. And if you're watching this and that's you, I urge you to look for it. Going back to the start of the conversation, just to be in pursuit of a purpose for yourself is good enough. You don't have to find it, but to be in pursuit of it is really important. I believe anyway. It will keep you going when you're down. It will keep you working when the money's not there, when the clients aren't there. If things happen bad in the world, it doesn't matter to you. I quite enjoy telling people that I haven't watched the news in 8 years and I've never voted or taken part in any political activity whatsoever. And people don't like that. They don't think that they think I'm doing something wrong by not voting and stuff. But I'm so uneducated when it comes to that. I don't feel like that I would make that much difference, if you like. I'm trying. My purpose is so far away from external validation or forces that makes no difference. I'll build the biggest building, without the help of anyone, and I don't need to tear anyone else's building down. It comes back to that. I actually, for the ladies who watch, I seen a quote the other day that relates to the same thing. That said, I've never had to turn off another woman's. Oh, I never had to unscrew another woman's light bulb in order to shine. And I just thought that was beautiful, because that's absolutely right for people who are in the pursuit of purpose. They realise that. They realise that they'll do it no matter what the political, social, economic circumstances. Yeah, I believe that.
See, normally we wrap up these live shows with parting words of wisdom. I'm pretty sure you just left your parting words of wisdom.
That'll do.
Are you happy with that as your parting words of wisdom? Because that actually sounded quite good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Cool.
So if you're not too sure about what Danny Matthews' parting words of wisdom were, just rewind this about 3 minutes and listen to that last bit again.
Like it.
Pleasure. So as always, any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to Danny, either myself or to the Quicc team as a whole. If you want to get in touch with Danny, and I mean, he does all of my design stuff for me. He kind of sorted out my brand for me as well. So, I would personally validate the guy's obviously knows his stuff. I wouldn't invite him on here if I didn't. If you want to connect with him, he's actually the actual Danny, because he's the actual Danny.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And brand scorecard. So brand confidence scorecard, sorry. It's dannyand.co/scorecard. If you're curious about where your brand actually sits.
Yeah.
And I will be completing mine, or at least filling the form in, after this show.
Yeah, it's probably the best place to start, actually. Anyone who's curious about their brand and where they fit and how to find their unique competitive advantage. Scorecard's such an easy place to go. It's like the average time people complete it in is 3.5 minutes, and it's 30 or 40 questions that are yes/no answers. And you never know, it might actually give you a bit of insight about yourself that you didn't even know. So yeah, feel free to have a go.
Done. Well, thank you very much for joining. It's been a pleasure as always, and thank you very much. Thank you for joining.
Cheers, mate.
All right. So next week we have an extra special guest. Not that Danny's not special, but Danny's extra special, and this other guest is extra special. A little bit more. It's just a bit more kind of subtle. So next week is a special one for you. I'm quite excited about next week's because our guest seems like quite the character. So Post is going out about that one shortly. So get yourselves signed up, hit the notification button, reminders, and so on, because that's one you're probably not going to want to miss. So Danny, thank you for joining. Have a good day. Finally someone on my time zone. So I can say that to you. Have a good evening.
Thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Everyone else, have a good day, have a good afternoon, a good evening, wherever you are in the world, and we will see you next week.